Now, the reason why these burn out is the sealing rings can't seal properly in there. You can see where they've been running. If you put your finger in there, you can actually feel the groove. That should be nice and smooth right across. There, the sealing rings there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're just Teflon rings. And what happens, the guide, there'll be a bush that this runs on, bushing there. And that bushing wears out and then it chews into these drums. Then you get pressure problems like that and burns the clutches out. I'll just flip that over. There's a little waved cushion plate under there. There it is. And you can see it's got a waver in there. It's actually spring. When you're readjusting the clearance in the C4 clutch, you want to make sure that this waved plate, there's a special tool which is basically a plate that's this thickness, but it's not waved, it's flat. And that's how you actually adjust the end float in the C4 clutch. The other side, you can see where those rings are worn as well. A little bit better. So if you've got a spring compressor, you pop these circlips off, replace the seals under there. These clutch, in here you've got two pistons, the C4 and the C2 clutch. One goes into the other, but they operate independently of each other. So either one part over here, one clutch is applied or the other one. And another important thing to check on any of the pistons in these, because they're prone to cracking. They get little hairline cracks in there. Before you pull it apart, you could do a wet air pressure test, which basically means you put oil in there and you blow some air into it and you'll see if there's a crack or anything like that. These holes here, just one, that's just a bleed hole. Sometimes they have a little ball in there that leaks. You want it to be able to release the oil that gets trapped behind that piston. And on the other side, these ones, they've just got a clear hole. The C3 clutch, which is the one that's applied in reverse. Put that over there. You can see there's quite a fair bit of end float in there. And that would add to the delay when selecting reverse. Now these are worn as well. You can see those friction plates are pretty worn. Well, that end one is anyway. The inside one's not so much, but they haven't worn right through and chewed into the steel plates. So they're just worn. Hasn't burnt out. And the same with these. You want to check your bushings there. Where that runs, you can put this in the other way and you can see that's got quite a bit of clearance there. And this one as well. Again, you need to check the piston hasn't got a crack in it. They develop a real hairline crack in there, and then these clutches will burn out quicker and easier. We've got a lathe, so we like to linish these with a mirror finish, so it's nice and smooth on the bushings. They last a lot longer. And also these Torrington bearings, you want to check them, make sure they haven't chewed into anything. To get the front servo off, I just use one of those clamps and that just goes right over the whole case. And you just need to push that cover in a little bit to be able to pop that circlip out. There it is, circlip, and then we just loosen the pressure off that. It won't pop right out because the O-ring gets stuck in that little groove. There's a chamfer to not damage that seal when it's going in, but to get it out, it gets stuck on the sharp edge, on the straight edge. Pop out that servo. I just use the air, get a newspaper or something, put it there just so no oil goes everywhere. And I'm just going to pump it out on there. Just give it a quick burst. Oh, there we go. You can see it's popped out. There we go. There's a cover. Sometimes these get damaged as well, so you want to check hasn't got any scratch marks in there. Looks alright. Got the spring. There is a little spring under here. You need to actually compress this down onto it to be able to pull that circlip out. So you need to compress it down about 5 mil to be able to pull that circlip out, and then you want to just check that that spring, big heavy spring under there, isn't broken. And in here we have just a little plastic, it's just like a spacer, just so that volume of oil doesn't have to be in there. There is a little valve there, you can see it. Make sure that's not sticking or worn or anything like that. Now I can pull that front band out. You got these little struts that apply the band. On the front band they're the same. Now I can take out the two center support bolts, and they're T50. And these need to be Loctited in, because when you're applying the C3 clutch, it actually goes through that center support to the C3 drum. So you want to make sure that there's a good seal pulling up where the center support is coming up to the case. They don't have an O-ring or anything on there, so when you're doing it up, you want to do it up evenly, slowly each side until it pulls it up, and you want that sealing as best as it can on that little port there. They're just the center support bolts. And in the case there, on the center support, there is a circlip. So we find where the end of it is. There we go. Circlip that holds the center support. And now this whole bit just slides out. There we go. And that's the center support and the planetary gears. And in here you've also got a Sprag clutch. If I hold it with the planetary in my right hand, it actually locks, again locks to the right or clockwise, and free anti-clockwise. Now I can pull those struts out of that band. Probably be easier if I undo that other servo, and they're just 8 mil. I'll just whiz them off. Here it is. You have a little spring there and the servo piston in there. You probably need a little bit of air in that port just to pop that out. Just be careful when you're popping it out, that's all. Now I can pull that strut out on the front band, which is that one. And the other side, you can see where that little shim is, the band adjustment shim is. And we just pinch the top of that band just so it collapses it a bit, and there it is. You can see that rear band looks good. Doesn't appear to be worn at all. And now we take out the output shaft, and that just comes out like that. And there it is. This bushing here wears out where the planetary runs in, and we've also got the annulus gear which runs on the outside of the planetary. You've got the output shaft runs on that case bush there. That one always wears out. And basically, apart from the parking pole there and that little lever that actuates the rear band, it's all apart. There are two little seals on the selector there. You need a special tool to pull them out without damaging the case. Again, I mentioned earlier, you got to pull this pin out to be able to get that range sensor off, and there's another little seal under there as well. Valve body. When you're pulling the valve body off, just make sure you're holding the separator plate up to this part. This is actually the top half, just so no check balls or anything fall out when you get it off. There's also a little locating pin there that holds it. Sometimes they might be a little bit stuck on the gasket. Wriggle it off like so. We can flip that over now, and then now we can take that separator plate off. And there's the other gasket. And there are all the little check balls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Quite often you'll find that there's a different material. I forget what the name of it is, but these three in the middle, that's how I always remember it. If you put a little circle on the inside there, they're that different material, the brown plastic check balls, and the outer ones are just the yellowy plastic ones. They usually come in the kit anyway. So we can take all those balls out. Good idea to just mark it. You can mark it with a little X or a little mark on there. Don't make sure you don't damage it too much. And there's only one valve up here that we need to clean out. Take it out, wash it out when we're cleaning that valve body out. The lower half of the valve body, there'll be this little filter here. Go on. They're in the kit as well. And there's a big, large plastic check ball that goes in there. If you have a look on all these other valves, especially the ones that have the solenoid on them, there are these little plates there. That just stops the valve from hitting up against the solenoid and damaging the plastic. So again, you can put a little mark there just so you know where they are, because quite often they're just loose in there. They just fall out as you're flipping it over. And pulling this apart, very important to make a note of which valve goes where and which springs. If you mix it up, you can get into all sorts of trouble later trying to work out what the problem is. So we're going to go through now and just make sure that all these surfaces are nice and smooth. Replace any bushes that are worn. Replace all the seals, sealing rings, Torrington bearings. You can get a kit that replaces all those. And make sure you double check all the where the bushings are, where the shafts run on, because that's what actually keeps everything sort of running true. Don't mix up your Sprag clutches. They have to go in a certain way. What else have we got? Going through the valve body, probably a good idea to just mark everything if you're unfamiliar with them, and take them out one by one, cleaning and making sure they travel freely through the valve body. In another video I actually show you how, in the olden days before the vacuum testers, how you can actually check with a bit of solvent there if those valves are leaking, if they're worn out in the bore or the valves are worn out. And also when you're putting all the seals back in, make sure you've got the right seal and that you don't bite a bit off as you're fitting it back in. Everything has to go in nicely and easily. We've got the trans lube, which is basically like your petroleum jelly or Vaseline when you're putting it back together. And the solenoids, because of how much muck was in these, we'll probably end up replacing the S5, which is a pressure control solenoid, and the plastic on-off solenoids are all the same. There's 6 of those. One's located, if you can remember, on the valve body. So you want to make sure that one's perfect. The other ones, if you choose to flush them out and test them, you can replace them by lowering the valve body without having to remove the whole transmission out of the car. Anyway, I hope that has helped show you how we disassemble them. If I get time, I'll make another video of actually reconditioning one of these. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Buy me a beer if this information has helped in any way. And thank you for watching.